Hi everyone, my name's Matthew Frost from Alpha Legal Solutions, Accident Investigator Extraordinaire. This morning I'm interviewing a very special guest, a chap called Ian Brodie, who I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. Ian is a leading marketing expert and he's worked for a number of law firms around the country as well as numerous other businesses, and he's also working with clients worldwide too. So we're in very esteemed company this morning.
Thanks very much, Matthew.
What I wanted to have a chat with Ian about this morning is email marketing. It's something which many lawyers probably don't really think of first and foremost as a way of building the business, okay? But it does represent a fantastic opportunity to engage with your audience and get more business in. So, for anybody that doesn't already know you, Ian, perhaps you could just give us a quick introduction.
Okay, I think you summed me up quite well. I'm Ian Brodie. I am a marketing and sales coach consultant. I work only with professional service firms, and I work to help them get more clients. Sometimes that's in the kind of offline world of helping them improve their sales presentations or skills at nurturing client relationships. And a lot of it these days, of course, is on the online world. And in fact, that's how I get all my clients. About 30% of my clients come through referrals from existing clients, and about 70% of clients find me online, and then they hook up, sign up for my regular emails, and they get them from me. And over time, many of them eventually become clients. So that's me. I just don't know how to say this without sounding all showy-offy. I've won various awards for being a marketing and sales thought leader and all sorts of stuff like that. But my wife tells me that that's not really important. What's important is I'm a nice kind of guy.
There's nothing wrong with getting recognition from your peers, though.
Yeah. By the way, we have a cat and it's just jumped on the table in front of me. So if my eyes start darting, or you see this furry thing drift in front of the screen, it's the cat, which has a tendency when my wife's working on a computer to jump in front of her and things. So maybe he'll do it for me. Might be quite exciting later on during the video.
Well, we could run a competition for people. Spot the cat.
You can, if you spot the cat. It's like that famous video on psychology where a gorilla runs across and no one notices. We've got a cat instead.
Okay. Now, actually, there's a very interesting thing that you just said there, Ian, that 30% of your business comes in from referrals.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very high amount of referral business that you get in.
Yeah, well, I guess it's that's probably by it's probably even higher if you look at it by value. So referral businesses tends to be higher value. Referrals are great because they shortcut the whole process. I mean, I'm very similar to most lawyers. In my world of consulting, before someone hires me, they need to build up a high degree of trust in me, and I need to be very credible to them. They need to believe that I'm going to be able to do what I say I can do for them, help them grow their client base. And that doesn't happen overnight. So there are really two ways of doing that. One is that you nurture the relationship over time, which is what we're going to talk about when it comes to email marketing. The other side is that you get a head start, because if someone refers you, then they've already bestowed a high degree of trust and credibility on you,
Sure.
because it's someone the potential client already trusts and believes is credible. So that kind of works for me. And I guess that finding someone who knows what they're doing when it comes to marketing for the professions is such a rarity that I get referred quite a lot.
So, okay, let's move on to email marketing then. First and foremost, why is email marketing so important?
Well, I think it comes down to what we just mentioned about the need to nurture relationships. So if you forget email for the moment and just think about clients in general, and you think about legal clients, then of course there are some that kind of drop in, but those tend to be lower value, etc. And there are some kind of emergency cases. If you suddenly find yourself being sued, you don't have a lot of time to prepare for it. You need to find a solicitor very quickly. But most legal clients, especially bigger ones, especially businesses, the cycle of getting that client on board takes time, and it takes multiple contacts with them to nurture that relationship. And lawyers have always done that in the real face-to-face world, you've met someone at a networking event, you've built a relationship with them over months and months. Eventually, you go to talk to them about what you might do for them. You have a couple of those conversations, and then the next time they come to review their legal service providers, or they're refreshing the panel or whatever it might be, then they speak to you, and you may win that piece of work. So the reality is that it takes multiple contacts with someone before they're likely to become a client. Now, if you then translate that to the online world, the problem with just your website is that typically someone may find your website, and they go through Google, they find it. Now, if you think again of that cycle, most of the time when people start looking for information about the sort of problem they've got or the needs they have, it's usually many months in advance of when the actual need is taking place. So if their first initial investigations are months in advance, they might find your website, they might see some useful information on it and think, oh, that's really interesting. But usually what then happens, and it happens with me, and I'm sure it happens to you as well, you might remember to bookmark it, you'll probably mainly make a mental note and go, oh, I'll come back to that. And then, of course, 2 months later, you never do. You can't remember where it was. I'm forever frustrated by remembering, oh, yeah, that was that brilliant bit of information on that website, but just never being able to find it again.
Yeah.
And so just the website by itself isn't going to be enough to get those multiple interactions, because it might, for a small percentage of people, you might be lucky, but for a large bulk of people, they'll visit your website, even if they think it's great, they very often won't make it back, and so you won't have had that relationship built. So email marketing, what it does, it puts control of the relationship into your hands, because once someone has subscribed and agreed to receive regular communications from you, then you can then proactively decide when you want to communicate with them, and you can keep that going on a regular basis. You can keep touching them, sending them useful stuff, so that when the time does come that they're looking to hire someone, you're top of mind, and you're the first person they turn to.
Sure. Okay. Well, you've just said about turning people that have come to the website into subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that's a whole new subject in itself, but broadly speaking, how do you actually get a visitor to actually subscribe?
Okay, well, I suppose there's kind of like an equation for it, and there are lots of people who study this and they do tests on different things, and I've done various tests myself. But really, there are four big factors that drive whether or not someone is going to subscribe to what it is you're offering them, to regular communications from you. And on the positive side, the things that are going to push them towards subscribing are firstly the kind of long-term value they see in getting stuff from you. So if your newsletter or regular communications look as if they're in the right area that will be interesting for them, they look as if they're going to be high value, then that helps. Now, obviously, if you're someone famous already, so, in the marketing world, if you're Seth Godin or whoever, then that's enough for me. It's a famous marketer offering to send me useful marketing information. I think I will subscribe. So often that can be enough in its own right. But if you're less well known, then sometimes you need a bit more of an incentive for them to subscribe. So you've got that kind of long-term value from the communications. But what is often useful to do is to give them a short-term incentive. You can call it a lead, but it's usually some initial big thing they get that deals with an immediate issue or problem they have that they think, yeah, absolutely, I want that. That will be really useful for me. So in my case, on my website, I have a thing called the Pain-Free Marketing Blueprint, which is a report and an associated set of videos about how to do marketing that isn't painful and pushy and salesy. And a lot of people in the professions really tune into that. They don't really enjoy marketing and selling. They don't want to come across as kind of pushy salespeople. So they hook in and say, yeah, that thing itself is really valuable. I'll sign up just to get that thing, and recognize that on doing so, I'll also get Ian's regular communications with his hints and tips. So those are the big two factors driving towards signing up: is an incentive, a thing you give away for signing up, and obviously the perception of the long-term value they'll get. The things mitigating against it are twofold. One is risk. So if you've got a website that looks scammy, it looks as if you're some kind of fly-by-night person, they've never heard of you, there's only one page on the website, it's kind of a weird address, and it looks like all you're trying to do is grab their email address so you can send spam to them, then people are going to be less willing. So the more you can do to make your website, and especially the page in which they're potentially going to sign up from, look professional, have a little no spam guarantee, have some testimonials on there, that sort of stuff, that's going to make them think, oh yeah, this is safe. It's safe to give my email address across. And the other final factor is what they call friction, which is if someone goes to a website and you want them to subscribe to your email newsletter on that website, and yet on that website you've got all sorts of flashy images, social media icons, links to other interesting articles, the chances are they're going to get distracted. Or if you form to get them to sign up to get your email newsletter, so as well as their name and email address, ask for their telephone number, the name of their business, their address, their turnover, their position in the business, their inside leg measurement, all that sort of stuff. That's just going to put people off.
Okay.
It's just too much information to collect. So usually as a first step for an email newsletter, all you really want to collect is the name and the email address, because anything more, you will get a much lower subscription rate. Later on in the nurturing, once you've built some trust with them, you can maybe ask for some more information. But early on, when they don't necessarily trust you a lot, you want to make it as easy as possible to subscribe, decrease the potential risk, and give them a big incentive for subscribing.
Okay. Now, one of the things which you just mentioned then was about spam.
Mm.
Now, I don't know about you, Ian, but I know whenever I open my inbox, I'm constantly getting messages from, whether it be from marketing companies, from people which are trying to sell me things, and really you tend to tune out. So, does email marketing still work, or do you find that people are overwhelmed by it, or how do you make your email stand out?
Ooh, good question. Multiple questions there. Yeah, the first one is yes, email marketing still works. There's no question that email open rates are going down generally. There's no denying that. I think the average, the last statistic I saw from last year was the average, I think, open rate. I think its open rates went from about 14% about 3 or 4 years ago to about 11.5%. So it's going down, but it's only going down a little. But the thing to remember is that's an average open rate. So that's, if you think more and more spam is being produced that people aren't opening, that's going to send the average down, even if your emails are still being opened at the same rate. So, I still open 100% of the emails I get from my wife, for example.
Sure.
Those open rates haven't gone down. And my accountant and anyone else who I think is sending me useful, valuable information. So if people think they're going to get great stuff from you, they're still going to open your emails. Now, there is a chance that your email may end up in the spam filter. And in particular, what the email service providers have been doing recently is they've been looking at algorithms. In fact, they have a thing, both MSN and Google have a thing they kind of call grey mail, which is stuff that isn't spam, but it's newsletters and stuff like that. And basically the way their algorithms work is the less people are opening those emails, the more likely it is to be pushed down as a lower priority in everybody else's email inbox as well. Not just your own, but it affects everyone else who's on Gmail or who's on MSN Mail and stuff like that, Hotmail. So what you have to do is you have to, the more people are opening your emails, the more other people are likely to see them. The more people are replying to your emails, the more they're likely to get into people's inboxes. So, for example, one thing I do when people first subscribe to my newsletter is I give them a little initial email says, hi, welcome to the newsletter. By the way, if you've got a problem with your a challenge with your marketing and sales, you like to ask a question, just hit reply and ask me a question and I'll answer it. And I do. If anyone ever emails me and asks me a question about marketing or sales, I will personally reply back and answer it, which is great and helps build my relationship. But what it also does, because someone's replied to an email I've sent, it means my email is highly unlikely to ever go in the spam filter because the email systems recognize there's an actual interaction going on there. So yes, email response rates are coming down, but they're still good if your emails are good and people recognize they're going to get value from you. And I think the last check, I think the American Direct Mail Association does checks on the return on investment on marketing for various different channels. Now, it doesn't cover everything, but it covers email marketing, direct mail, mobile messaging, website advertising, search marketing on Google. And email marketing still has double the return on investment of anything else, basically, because it works, because it deals with that relationship rather than just a one-off hit, then it has such a high return on investment.
So compared to something against, for example, direct mail, email marketing, I suppose not only is more cost efficient because you're not sending out a mail which is costing you postage, but you're actually getting twice the response to it.
You are. Well, certainly twice the ROI. just a little caveat on that. That's particularly permission-based email marketing. So what I don't recommend is buying a list of emails and sending out emails unsolicited to that list,
Hmm.
because you will get a very low response rate to that. You can kind of get away with sending out an email to that list and offering them something of value, your lead magnet we talked about, and then if they subscribe, they get on a different list, which is your permission-based one. But I don't do that myself personally. What I use is a separate set of channels. So I'll use the website itself, or social media, or even direct mail as an outbound channel to offer people the free thing. So they'll come to my website, or they'll click a link on a tweet that goes to a blog post, and alongside they'll see that they can get my free pain-free marketing blueprint if they subscribe. Once they've subscribed, then I'm emailing them, but I don't send unsolicited email to people. I don't buy lists and send email
Sure.
from that. And that if you are buying an email list, then the response rate is going to be an awful lot less. Or if your email list has come from people you've met at a networking event who you haven't explicitly asked for permission from,
Yeah.
you'll often get either a low open rate, or a high disgruntled rate, I call it, where someone you meet kind of you give them your business card. If you send them your newsletter, I have this a lot where I've just given someone my business card, and automatically I start getting their newsletter. I'm not really interested,
Yeah.
but because I've known them, I don't want to upset them by unsubscribing. And so what happens is I get crosser and crosser with them over time, and then so in 6 months' time, when I finally do unsubscribe, I hate them by that stage for sending me all this crap. So don't do that. Don't just sign people up if you get their business card or their details. Make sure you get their permission. If you want to do it face to face, actually ask. So if you're having that conversation, if you mention something useful, then you can actually say, "Oh, by the way, I send out a regular, weekly newsletter with tips on the stuff we've just been talking about. If
Yeah.
you'd like a copy, I'll sign you up for that." Or send them an email after you've met. By the way, just what I've just said. If you're interested in my blah blah blah, just click this link and you can sign up for it. So make sure you have permission, and it's increasingly important. The more the email systems get sensitive about spam and sensitive about email that's not spam but isn't read very often, the more your open rates will go down. And because the systems are now applying those algorithms across so there's a tremendous amount of commercial email is actually powered by Gmail behind the scenes, even if it's on your domain. And if Gmail detects that many people are not opening the email, and a few people are marking it as spam, it's going to start sending all your emails to everyone into the spam filters of Gmail, and it's just not going to get through. So you need to be, especially these days, just narrowing down and making sure you're only sending your mails to people who are going to be good responders. And one of the things to do as well is that is if people haven't opened, you detect this from most of the email systems, whether people are opening your emails or not.
Yeah.
And if people aren't opening your emails, then send them an email. If they haven't opened an email for 3 months, send them one more email or 2 more emails saying, "Hey, you haven't been opening, so maybe you're not so interested in the topic anymore. So what I'm going to do is, unless you kind of reply or hit this button, I'm going to take you off the list. I'm not going to bore you with emails you're not interested in," and just get those non-responders off the list.
Yeah.
So that they're not affecting the open rates in the email system, and so that you don't get.
Okay. So once we've got people who are happy to receive information, how do you then start to build that relationship? What kind of content goes in?
Right. Well, useful, valuable content, but also content that's entertaining as well. I think that's one of the things often missed in emails is, well, firstly, if you look at bad practice, what you see, and I have to say, you see it from a lot of law firms, is that they'll do a couple of things. One thing is they'll send out big, flashy emails that seem to consist of nothing but news about the firm and details of their services. And the truth is, no one's really, unless they're ready to buy right now, that's of no value to anyone. So you don't want that. Secondly, what people will often do is they'll overwhelm. So they'll send out an email once a month or once every 2 months with tons of information in it. And with email these days, as you said, people get so many emails. You want something short and sharp they can digest quickly. So you don't want to be sending out a huge email newsletter with 3 different stories in it that when people get it on in their desktop, they look at it and they think, "Oh, I'll read that later." And then, of course, they never do because people are just so bad at managing their emails.
Yeah.
What you want is something short and digestible. You want it to be great content, and your content wants to do two things. One is it has to deal with an important challenge or problem or opportunity that the client's interested in. So it needs to be in a kind of field that is related to why they signed up in the first place.
Okay.
So, in your case, if you kind of the accident investigation and people are signing up for a newsletter that would explain more about the process and what goes on, etc., when there's an accident, then it needs to be kind of on topic and provide them useful information. From your perspective, what you want the email to do is to build your credibility. So, for example, stories about your clients and where the person reading it learns a useful tip, but it's set in the context of a story about one of your clients and what they did and how you helped them. That works really well because people like stories. You learn useful information, and subconsciously they see that you've helped a client. So it's building your credibility. So if you think about that as you write, and then the final thing to do is to try and make it entertaining in some sense, so that people are looking forward. I mean, we've got so many emails these days, and not only so many emails just with boring stuff in, but so many emails full of content, so many emails with tips and hints and purportedly useful information. You're kind of overloaded with it. So if one guy writes a story about how he went to the cinema and he saw the new Avengers film and blah blah blah, but then relates it to a tip about your marketing or your HR law or whatever it might be that the newsletter is about, that's a little bit more interesting and a little bit more entertaining, so you're more likely to read it. And there's a real art to that, to combining something people are interested in with getting over some useful, valuable content, so that credibility, they keep reading because it's interesting, and it builds your credibility as it goes along.
It's funny you should say that, Ian. There's actually one of your emails that sticks out in my mind very, very well. And I can remember exactly what I was doing at the time. I can remember exactly what the message was about and the underlying message. And it was an email that you sent out about Jeremy Clarkson. And I was driving at the time, and I know I shouldn't have been.
Oh no, that's terrible.
But, I was driving at the time when I saw this email come through, and I saw the headline, and I actually pulled over, and I was on my way to go and see a client, and I read this email, and this email that you sent was all about how Jeremy Clarkson is loved by people and hated by people at the same time, and how it's such a one of the things which was so fantastic about it is the fact that he always stands out to the people which follow him, and for any coach, consultant, blah blah blah, and obviously in this case lawyers, etc. It's not necessary that you are liked by everybody in the world, more that the people which do follow you don't just like you, that they love you and they hang on every word.
Absolutely, absolutely. And he does that very well, Mr. Clarkson. I don't know whether it's a deliberate strategy or just his personality, but he has a set of people who love him and a set of people who hate him.
Yeah.
You don't make money from people who just think you're okay. You make money from people who love you, essentially. And he has enough people who love him that he does very well, I believe.
He certainly seems to have done. I mean, he's been in the public domain for as long as I can remember, so he's not making a bad living out of it.
I'm sure not. And that's a classic example that a lot of people are interested in Clarkson. So I think the headline was something, marketing. I think it was something along the lines of, what I learned about marketing from Jeremy Clarkson or something like that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people will know Jeremy Clarkson, especially in the UK. They'll go, oh, why is Ian writing about Jeremy Clarkson? They'll be intrigued by the fact it's Jeremy Clarkson, someone in the news and a celebrity, rather than a marketing topic. And when they get in, there's a useful topic in there. But it was interesting, and it's a different angle, a different spin on things, rather than the usual, here's a list of 3 things you should do with your marketing, or here's a list of 5, whatever, or here's a tip on this. If you make it unusual, people are more interested in reading. And different sorts of things hook different people. So I write I'm a real enthusiastic gardener. So I've written a couple of emails about how things I've done in the garden, about nurturing seedlings, for example, or about when I had a huge job to do clearing a whole pile of rubbish at the bottom of the garden when we first bought the house, and about just getting motivated to do stuff. And people have written in back and said, "Oh, that really rang a bell with me. That's exactly the sort of challenges I have, etc." And sometimes the analogy softens the message as well, and that it's not you as some all-knowing guru saying, "Hey, you, this is what you've got to do," and coming off all over pushy. You
Hmm.
get the message through. I mean, that's why Jesus taught in parables, I guess, and Aesop taught in fables, is that you get messages across better
Yeah.
if you wrap them up in a story because they're more entertaining and they're not quite so hard-edged. When people kind of listen to the story and they go, "Oh yeah, I know what you mean," they take it in more than if you kind of ram it down their throats. So it works really well in emails. It's both more interesting for people, so they keep reading,
Yeah.
and it works better as a teaching tool, essentially.
And one of the things which you said there was about the headline that you used in that email. And funnily enough, I mean, I'm thinking about it. That email that you wrote it must have been at least 12 months, possibly even 2 years
Mm.
old, and it's still clear in my head as though it was yesterday. So I mean, obviously, it's had a huge impact on me, and I would imagine many other people too. So how important is the headline?
The headlines are especially important early on. Eventually, when someone has been subscribed and receiving your newsletters for 2 years or whatever, then in a way it doesn't matter what you put in the headline because they're opening it because it's from you. So once you've built your reputation, that's the most important factor as to whether someone will open your email. It's who it's from. And if it's from you and they know they're going to be getting good stuff from you, then they'll open it. But earlier on, the headlines are quite important. In that, you're running down your list of emails, you're choosing which ones to open, which ones to file, and of course, unfortunately, we file them, we never read them. So the headlines got to grab your attention, and typically headlines that work are headlines that either promise a benefit. So, and it's just like headlines on newspaper articles or headlines on sales letters. So something that promises a benefit, like, the 3 best ways of doing X, Y, and Z, or, how to make I wouldn't say how to make $1 million. I'm using that as an exaggerated example. No one's going to open something. Well, people might open something, but it's probably going to end up in a spam filter, something saying how to make $1 million. But, the 3 best ways of cutting your marketing costs in half or something like that.
Yeah.
So if there's an immediate benefit, and people are interested in that benefit, then they'll open. Another one that gets opened is news. So if something relates to something in the news, so I guess if you're in the IT world, in the last few days in Europe, we've had this cookie law implementation where all websites have to have this thing that pops up, or it's got to be very clear that you're putting cookies on their machine, all that sort of stuff. So if you're an IT guy writing to your subscribers, if you wrote about the cookie law because it's on people's minds and they're worried about it, then it's going to get opened because it's relevant and it's newsworthy. And then the final one is curiosity. And this is the stuff to do with Jeremy Clarkson or something in the news or just something a little bit weird. So one of my emails early on, I think it's another marketing lessons ones. It's marketing lessons from a geeky kid. And you kind of wonder, well, what can a geeky kid teach us? And the geeky kid was me 20 years ago. And it's, but it makes people click it and open it because they're wondering what on earth is that about.
Yeah.
Now you can go too far with those ones. There's a lot. There are famous marketers who have very high open rates for some of their emails with just headlines like "damn it" or "my mistake, sorry" and stuff like that. And you open it, and sometimes the message inside has nothing really to do with what they've put on the subject line. The subject line was just there to get you to open it. So if someone wrote a subject line saying "damn it," then you probably open it to wonder why they've said "damn it." But if they overuse that kind of thing, "damn it" on it begins to wash over you. You get acclimatized to it, and you stop opening them. So you've really got to pay off any. If you have a headline that says "damn it," then the message inside has got to be about something genuinely bad that you're saying "damn it" about, rather than "damn it, oh, I forgot to remind you that you can buy my new product," or whatever. And that's anything. Oh God, just an excuse to get me to open it to sell something to me. And next time they send one like that, you don't read it. So it's got to pay off and match. But as I say, those are the 3 kind of the tried and tested subject lines: benefits, news, or curiosity. And as you build your relationship, often the curiosity ones work the best. So if you already know me and you already know I'm going to be giving you benefits anyway, that's implied. And then it's the curiosity factor that kind of works. On the other hand, if you don't know me and it's just a curiosity play on the subject line, you might be thinking, okay, well, it looks interesting, but I don't see how I'm going to get anything of value from it. Now, of course, you're not rationally thinking this through. It's happening in an instant in your mind, but that's kind of what the mind's processing really quickly. Am I going to get something useful from this email? So I usually reckon to go with benefit-related headlines early on, and then as your relationship builds, switch to curiosity ones.
Okay. Are there any particular trigger words which either you have found to have a better open rate than others, or that people should particularly avoid?
Gosh, on the better open rate than not, often things with numbers in work, and the reason things with numbers in work is because they hit two of those things we were talking about. So if you say, I think I have an email with a very high open rate that's something like the top 3 reasons you're losing sales, and that works because that works for 2 reasons. One is it's benefit oriented in that if they know what the reasons they're losing sales are, they'll be able to avoid losing the sales. But the second thing, because it's got a number in, that invokes curiosity. What are those top 3? Does Ian think the same as me? What's in his list? It's like those awful, top 10 holiday destinations or the top 100 kids' toys programs on TV.
Yeah.
That you still end up having to watch them right to the end, all 3 hours of them, just to see what's number 1. Even though you're not really interested, but has Lego made it to number 1? And so you watch them right to the end. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. But
no, it's definitely not just you.
So it's kind of the curiosity. When you use numbers like that, that tends to work. Again, don't overuse them. If every single headline you send out, subject line you send out is 5 ways of doing that or the 7 best of these, then people are going to get used to it and it's going to wash over them. But throw in a few of those and that tends to work. Otherwise, I use just a wide variety. Obviously, there are certain phrases that may trigger spam filters. By the way, also in the news, there was a study that I think it was HubSpot did of emails that got opened the most. And some of the phrases that get opened the most are ones you wouldn't expect, but it's phrases like newsletter or series and things like that. And it's phrases that imply so if, for example, you send out a regular newsletter and it says Ian's newsletter in the subject, then people know it's your newsletter, and if they get value from you, they're more likely to open it. Now, I don't do that because pretty much the only emails people get from me are my newsletter, so they kind of know if it's from me. But if you were a bigger company and only 1 in 5 emails was the newsletter, marking it out, put it in brackets or something, newsletter issue 7 or whatever, then if the newsletter's adding value, knowing it's a newsletter, they're more likely to open it. In terms of the kind of spammy words, I actually just rely on most email systems you use these days have a spam checker. When you compose your email, it will check the words because the filters change all the time. So, for example, people used to say that the word free triggered spam filters, and so they used to start doing silly things like putting f.re to get around the spam filter. Well, of course, the spam filters pick that up and they find who are the people putting f.re? It's spammers. So pretty soon, f.re is much worse than the word free because all the spammers are using it. So it's very, obviously I would be wary of anything with Viagra or sex or Cialis or whatever, which you're probably not going to do anyway. But other than that, the use whatever email system you've got will probably have a way of checking for spam triggering phrases. But typically the way the filters work, it's not individual phrases. It's things like, is the message very short? Does it have an image in it? And it's a short message. And does it also have some of these phrases? And it kind of adds up the score. And it's an overall picture. And of course your own track record that affects whether you're going to be triggered as spam. So if people are always opening your emails, they're reasonable size, they're not too long but they're not really short ones, then you can put the odd spam word in and it won't trigger anything because it's coming from you and it's the right size and blah blah blah, and there's not for example, putting too many links in your email can trigger a spam filter as well, but 1 or 2 usually good, that sort of thing.
Okay. Actually, you've just said there about using words like Viagra. I don't know about you, Ian, but if I was subscribing to a lawyer and a lawyer sent an email about Viagra, I think I would open it because I'd be pretty curious to see what it was about.
Might get away with it, yeah. Well, exactly. It's that curiosity thing. Why is a lawyer emailing? You think part of you's thinking, has his email system being hacked, and the other half of it maybe thinking, I wonder if he's got something really weird to say about how Viagra applies to litigation or whatever.
Um, Now, you also said about email systems. Then, what's the best way of going about this? Because if you're going to have a number of people, which are getting your newsletters on a regular basis, I take it this is something that you wouldn't just use Outlook for or something like that.
Yeah, there are three ways to go, really. One is use Outlook or whatever. Wouldn't recommend that because, firstly, you have to comply with legislation. In the US, there's the CAN-SPAM Act. Over in Europe, we have the EU Communications and Privacy Directive, or Privacy and Communication. I can't remember, but it's the Electronic Communications. Gosh, the people listening to this should actually know what this is, shouldn't they? Um, but you have to comply with that. And one of the key elements on both sides of the channel with that is that you have to have an easy way for people to unsubscribe and to control their subscription. So if you are just using Outlook, what that means is you will have to manually put in something at the bottom of every email you send saying to unsubscribe, please just reply with the word unsubscribe. And if anyone unsubscribes, you'll have to manually take them out of that database and the mailing list. And it just becomes a huge pain. The other danger is if your emails get flagged as spam, then the domain you're sending them out from, your IP address, will get flagged as spam, and you're kind of stuck. Whereas the commercial email system providers, they have people constantly working in conjunction with the spam checkers to kind of say, the spam checker will say, "Oh, we've had a spam email from so and so." They'll go to the person on who buys their service and check whether it really was spam or whether it was an accidental report. If you get too many of them, and they'll either bar them if they are sending spam out, or they'll go back and say, "No, it wasn't spam. It was just too many people, 5 people hit the spam button, but it wasn't really spam, etc." Or we've given them a warning, and that means the spam checker people will then lift the filters and make sure that messages from that particular area don't get flagged as spam. So all that processing going on in the background and whitelisting and stuff like that is a lot of work. So if you go with a commercial email provider, they do that for you. The third option is you can buy software that sits on your own website and controls that stuff for you. But again, it simplifies it gives you more control. It simplifies does the subscription process, the unsubscribes, all that sort of stuff. But it still runs a bit foul of if your domain gets marked as spam, you're kind of stuck because you don't have resources to go working with these people to get it lifted. Whereas with a commercial email provider, they're constant, because it's their business, they're constantly negotiating with with Google Mail and all the big mail providers to make sure their messages don't get flagged as spam. That if one does, and that's why they're quite tight as well. A commercial email provider will not let you send spam if the proper services, and if you do, you'll get barred very quickly, and that's good for all the other users of the system. So if you get something more like more than 0.5% spam rate or 0.1%, I don't know what the numbers are, I've just never been close, then eventually if you're sending out emails, someone will mark it as spam even though it's not. Just because they can't be bothered unsubscribing, it's easier for them to hit the spam button, and that stops them getting it. But if you get a large number, then they will investigate your account and you'll be barred if you really are spamming. And that protects the rest of the users and means their emails are always going to get through. So out of those, I would always go for the commercial email providers. And obviously, they're always investing in their technology, giving you analytics. So even at the simplest level, you've got simple ways of creating forms for people to sign up with, simple ways of managing the subscription, so they hit the button and they unsubscribe or the email address or whatever, and analytics that tells you who's opening what, which subject rates have the best open rate, so you can do them again. They allow you to test 2 different subject lines, see which one gets the most opens, and then send more of that, for example. Or in more advanced email cases, they're often integrated completely with your shopping cart and stuff like that. So if someone buys something, it automatically puts them on an email sequence and they get a thank you and a follow-up and stuff like that. Yeah. So that just makes it easier just to do business if you use a commercial system.
Okay, and if people are not familiar with these commercial systems, what are the names of the companies they should be looking out for?
Okay, the bigger companies of the pure just email, so the simple email systems, the big ones, and they tend to be American. The big ones are Aweber is probably the biggest in the world, which I have a subscription to. I use for testing. iContact, Mailchimp is a nice fun one. They're very tight on the sort of business you have to be able to use it, and they have a free subscription. So Mailchimp is fun. Over in the UK, Dotmailer is a good UK service that is similar. And then you have a kind of set of higher level systems, which are the ones which have integrated shopping carts, much more detailed tracking. So, for example, one of the more advanced techniques in email marketing is lists called list segmentation. And it's basically if the people on your email list who are getting your emails, some of them, if they display certain behaviors or certain interests, you can only send certain emails to them. Right. So, for example, I use a system called Office Autopilot. And on that system, I can send out an email to everyone that says, hi everyone, I'm just writing a series of emails and tips on I don't know how to improve the success of your website. If you'd like a copy of them, just click this link here.
Yeah.
And what it'll do, it'll detect who clicks the link, and then I can trigger another series of emails only about websites that will only go to the people who click that link, and not to everyone. So what it means is I'm not boring the people who aren't interested in websites with the emails about websites. Only the people who click the link will get the email about the website. So that's a bit more advanced. With the simpler systems, what you would have to get those people to do is to give you their name and email address again and to go onto a separate list. With the more advanced systems, it's like a full CRM system that just notes interests and tags people with certain things. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of say, only send this email to people who signed up in this, on these dates, who've expressed an interest in this and who opened this email or whatever. And you can get quite sophisticated about it. And that means, again, you're not spamming then. You're only sending things of great interest to people.
Yeah.
It's not really spam, but the trouble is, as your email list gets bigger and bigger, in my case, I deal with marketing, and there are some elements of marketing some people are interested in, some elements they're not. And obviously, if I just send all the emails to everyone, the open rates are going to be lower, and some people might mark it as spam if they just start getting 3 or 4 emails about website marketing that they're not interested in. And I don't want that, so I try and restrict it so only the people who are really interested get those emails. But that's more of an advanced strategy. But the systems that do that are Office Autopilot and Infusionsoft are the 2 big ones that do that.
I suppose actually for lawyers that something like that would be a good benefit if it's a larger law firm or even a smaller law firm which has a broad range of legal services that they offer.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, you can either manage it by when they sign up, getting them to specify specifically what they're interested in. But the trouble is that adds a step to the process. And so when people are first signing up for a thing, and what you could do is, you could have a different sign-up form on different pages. So, for example, if they come to a web page on your site and it's got useful information about litigation, for example, then when you sign up there, it could be sign up for the litigation tips newsletter or something, whereas the divorce law one, the family law, could be a separate one, and they get on different lists initially. But then, of course, that doesn't give you the chance to, for example, the person who, the chief executive or the head of HR who's interested in litigation or HR law may eventually need a divorce lawyer, and it doesn't allow you to test whether, and cross-sell and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a more advanced system, you can change what they get emails about on the fly based on their behavior rather than just what they signed up for in the first place. So it is a bit more advanced, and it could well work. I think you're right. It could be a good route to go down for them.
Okay. And then when people are all set up, they've got all the system that they need, they know how to write their email and so on, how often should they be writing to people?
As often as they've got something useful to say. I mean, when you're emailing, you're obviously most of your emails, there's 2 paths to getting clients from email. One path is you just keep sending them enough value and building enough credibility that eventually, when the time is right, they pick up the phone. What you'll also do, though, is every now and then you'll make a specific offer. So it may be, in my case, every now and then I take on new coaching clients, or I have a new online product training course to sell, etc. So I'll either drop that in to an email where I'm already giving them a tip and do it as a PS, it's relevant, or I'll send a one-off email. But you can't do too many of those, otherwise people, if you're just sending sales message after sales message, people become a bit sick of that. So. But if you think of those ones, that the main route is to just keep sending useful emails over time that people value with the odd PS in, and as long as it's useful, valuable information to people you're sending, it can be as often as you want. In quotes, I find that people's ability to come up with information and write, the frequency there is far less than in terms of it takes them longer to come up with something useful than people would be willing to receive emails on. So, I subscribe to some people who send marketing emails, so I get an email daily from them.
Yeah.
And it's a short, useful daily tip, and I'm very happy for that. If they sent me crap every day, I would unsubscribe pretty quick. So most people's ability to write daily emails it's not there. It's very, very difficult to keep churning that out. You have to be a real professional at email marketing to do that. So personally, I do at least one a week for everyone, with the occasional midweek email. And that's absolutely fine. At the end of the day, the people more willing to get repeated, frequent emails from you are usually going to be your best customers. If you think about it, if someone, and I wouldn't recommend for lawyers, for example, that they very often go more than one a week, because maybe it's just not that interesting a topic. I don't know the law, but that's a terrible thing to say. That's not true. But as long as it depends on the particular area, so as long as you've got something that you think people will be interested in, you could go almost daily. But people, it's difficult to come up with that, as I say. So you'll probably end up going weekly or bi-weekly. The trouble is, if you leave it too long, people almost forget you, and then the temptation is to cram too much in. So usually the lawyer's monthly newsletter ends up being too big, filled with 3 stories. Well, you should have sent those 3 stories out individually during the month in bite-sized chunks so people could digest them, not bang them all together. And then what happens is, let's say, if you miss an email 1 month, then that's 2 months or 3 months before you see you've forgotten the person by then. Yeah. And then if the email is one of those promotional ones, all of a sudden you've heard nothing from them for 2 months or a month, and you get an email where they're trying to sell something to you, and it doesn't feel right. If, on the other hand, someone has emailed you every week with something useful, and then 1 week they try and sell you something, that's fine, because you've had useful stuff from them week on week for 4 weeks. Yeah. It's great. The ratio's right, whereas the ratio is difficult to get right when you're emailing infrequently. So I think the long and the short is, I usually recommend something like weekly or bi-weekly, but I think you'll struggle to email too frequently because you just can't come up with the material. So don't worry about too frequently. Worry about not frequently enough.
Fair enough. And speaking of like statistics and things like that, and you mentioned before, are there any statistics that you can refer to so people will perhaps understand, out of the number of people that they have, what's the typical response or the typical conversion rate from subscriber to client?
Oh gosh, no, those are completely different by industry and by person. There are some standard rates, and maybe we can put a link after the video. I don't know them off the top of my head, but some of the services, I think MailChimp, for example, makes public its open rates by sector. So depending on the sector, and they typically vary between about 10 and 30%, I think, or 10 and 20% for open rates. But you have to realize those are big, large ones.
Yeah.
You can get, usually what happens is your open rates are much higher early on because the only people who've subscribed really know you very well. Mm-hmm. The bigger your list gets and the longer people have been on the list, obviously the lower the open rate goes. But what happens is, as nowadays is happening, I recommended before that people tidy the list up and get rid of the people who aren't opening. So all of a sudden you can have one person who used to have a 1,000-person email list, got rid of all the people who weren't opening, has now got a 300-person email list, and then their open rates for a little while after are going to be 80% because they've only got on it the people who are opening. So the figure can be quite missed depending on the list. In terms of the conversion to clients, that is very sector dependent. I did a little bit of benchmarking with a few consultants and coaches, and I reckon the conversion rate of a newsletter subscriber to a client is something like 1%. Now that doesn't sound very high, But is that right? Yeah. So, so it means if you've got 1,000 newsletter subscribers, 10 of them will turn into clients. And we're talking here with a client there. A client for a business coach, for example, is, two, three, five, £10,000 minimum.
Hmm.
So it's quite a high value per individual client. Could be even more. Could be even more. Usually is even more actually. Now, if I think about the numbers, if you think about maybe £1,000 a month and they last for 6 months, it's £6,000. So 1% doesn't sound like it's a high conversion rate to a client, but actually, it's not that difficult to get a 1,000-person mailing list. So it actually works out really well. It's why the return on investment is very high. That once you're sending out the email, weekly or monthly, that's a fixed cost. The bigger and bigger your subscriber list gets, all it means is you get more and more clients. At the end of the day, it doesn't
Yeah,
cost you any
yeah.
more to send. Doesn't really cost you any more to send to 10,000 as it does to 1,000, as long as you can build the list. Now, in other sectors, the conversion rate is going to be much higher. If you're selling lower value services and products, the conversion rate is going to be much higher. It could be 20,
Sure.
30% of people, especially if they've signed up specifically for an offer or something like that. So I was just there talking in the kind of consulting coaching field. It's quite low, but high value.
Okay. And just finally, then, Ian, if people want to get more advice on email marketing or marketing in general, and they wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way of doing that?
Well, easiest thing is just to go to my website at www.ianbrodie.com. If they want to get my emails and can kind of copy them, I guess, or see what I do, then there will be multiple boxes on that website for subscribing to what I call my insider strategy emails. There's a tip: call your emails something. Don't call your emails a newsletter, because newsletter implies you're going to send people news, and nobody wants news. Nobody wants to know my news. What they want is useful information from me. So I call it my insider strategy emails with client winning tips. So that sounds a bit more attractive. So if you want those, you can sign up for those at my website. You get a free copy of the Pain-Free Marketing Blueprint. Every now and then I cover email marketing in there. I'm just trying to think on my web. I've got a couple of articles on the website on email marketing, and I should have a bigger one coming up because I just recorded a couple of hours of video with someone where I was being interviewed about email marketing, and I think he's turning that into a product, and I think I'm getting a free copy basically. So some of those clips from those should be appearing on the website pretty soon.
Fantastic. Okay, well, all that remains to be said then, Ian, is thank you very, very much for joining me this morning. It's been a pleasure having a chat with you. It's been really, really useful listening to your tips and advice on email marketing. So thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure, Matthew. Great to speak to you.
Thanks. All the best.
Cheers.